So you can see I'm painting the some highlights now on the bridge, I mean the brow, right above his eyes, around his eyebrows. Hellboy doesn't appear to have any eyebrows, so I'm just painting that just some of the reds and some of the highlights, redefining the nose. You can see that in this photo with his makeup on, they've changed the bridge of his nose to look a little more angular and sharp. It fits Mike Mignola's style a little bit. Some of the makeup changes they did to change his features, obviously. Um, I want to make sure I reflect that without changing the proportions or the basic exaggeration. Now the light source is a little bit different in this photograph of Hellboy as it was in the photograph of Ron Perlman, but it's not that different that I can't use it as reference. So what I'm doing is I'm adding some darks and lights, that angular comic book style that they caught in this photograph with backlighting and rim lights and stuff like that. So I'm just basically doing a basic, pass of darks, lights, tones, and I'm trying to describe and almost sculpt this form to make the changes that I want to make to get this painting right. You can see here I'm starting to put in some of the shadow on the nose. It gets quite a bit darker over here, so I'm gonna choose this really dark red and just basically outline and shape where I want this shadow to cast from his nose, and you know, start making this painting or start making this Ron Perlman painting start to look like this Hellboy photograph. Just thought it'd be fun to do the two together, so I'm just going to move forward with that. And I'm not a lot of pressure to try to make it, to preserve the eyes. See, here you go, painting the nice yellow eyes already. I'm going at it pretty haphazardly and pretty sketchy. That's okay because you can just go back in and paint over, adjust, revise it, just like we talked about earlier. So while I do that, I wanted to mention another buddy of mine, Dan Haye. I mentioned him when I was giving you my little infomercial for my sketchbook next year. Uh, but Dan is an artist I worked with in Florida, and his work is just incredible. He's still just a caricature artist in Florida. I don't say just a caricature artist to belittle that term. It's an incredible thing. I felt like I learned more doing live theme park caricatures than I did in art school. It's a great experience, and if you ever have the chance to do it and you ever want to try it, I really do recommend it. Find a place where the artists have been doing it for a while and where there are some people that care. I know that San Diego SeaWorld in Orlando, Florida, and Tampa, Busch Gardens, there's some places where the artists really, really care. And this is just with this one company I worked for. There's some other companies that do a great job and they have some great managers and some great artists there. But Dan worked with me in Orlando at SeaWorld and at Cedar Point in Ohio. He draws in a hilarious style, and with all respect to John Kricfalusi, I feel like the way I've always described Dan is he draws what John K wants to draw, and and that's only for relative terms, so people can understand without actually seeing it. I feel like he draws Spumco the way Spumco was trying to be, and and John Kay is one of my favorite artists. So not to belittle what he does, it's just a reference. But Dan draws these incredible, simplified, exaggerated, twisted, um, just silly cartoons of people and caricatures of people, and he's just incredible. Now, what he did for a while last year was he decided to start drawing people from memory. I mean, he did this all the time when I worked with him, but he decided to go home every day and draw at least one person from memory that he saw that day, whether it was in the theme park, in the coffee shop, in a bookstore, at the restaurant on the way home. And he would draw on these little index cards, caricatures of people that he saw, and he would remember, that one feature. And this isn't something new. I've seen artists like Steven Silver and some other sketch clubs do this where they will do memory sketching. But he would go home, sit down with his little pen and his colored pencils, and he would just draw on an index card one person that he remembered, and he started putting them on a blog, and it was just incredible. So I asked him if I could, have some of these drawings, or have a file, have he could scan them for me, and I shown them to the people at Art Squared, and his book is now published. It's called Blubber Lubber. It was the name of his blog appropriately. Um, you can check out some of his illustration, a blog he just started. It's heydanhay.blogspot.com. Hay spelled Hay, Hey Dan Hay. Um, and he draws these people, and it's just incredible. He puts a little name with them, and they're hilarious. You'll see someone whose head looks like a piece of broccoli, and of course he titles it Broccoli Head. A guy with a giant stomach hanging really high over these spindly tall legs, and it's titled Hovering. It's really fun and clever, and it's just impressive that he could take the time to do that every night and remember what these people look like. And he conveys something that he taught me about caricatures and about illustration that are humorous. He says it's almost no good if you can't tell what the artist was thinking when he did the drawing. A good caricature, a good illustration, you can tell what the artist's intention was. You could tell what the point of it was. And I've had a bunch of artists say something like that to me, but he's the one that sticks in my head. I remember him telling me this. So again, sorry to plug it so much, but you got to check out artsquaredbooks.com and check out Dan's book. Um, they're low print runs, I believe, for this publishing company, so you want to get it before they're gone. And I'm sure they'll have more in the future. Like I said, I'm going to be doing my sketchbook with them, so they're going to have some more books in the future. You can see I'm still blocking in darks and lights on this painting of Hellboy. It's pretty much changed at this point from Ron Perlman to Hellboy entirely. Um, it's really fun working monochromatic like this, so I'm very lucky that the reference, obviously for Hellboy, is all red, so I can vary a little bit by adding a little bit of an orangey red or a little bit of a pinkish red, more saturation, less saturation, a little bit of white, and you can play around with that based on the reference. But it's so fun for me to paint monochromatic, and it's also a great way to go about a painting while incorporating color. If you don't have this reference of a red figure like Hellboy to do a monochromatic painting or relatively monochromatic painting from, it's also a great way to just do a painting with one color and to have a little more confidence with the start of the painting. If you check some of my older podcasts, some of these other YouTube videos I've got, I did one of Kanye West and one of an Italian greyhound, a dog. Um, I just chose a color. I chose one color that I wanted to work with, and I kept it restricted to that color, darks and lights, and didn't stray too much with the chroma or with the hue. And I find that it's a good way to just move forward with confidence and paint something and render something and start to understand color a little bit while you're basically just doing a black and white. It's like drawing with a pencil or painting with just values. It's just a value study, but when you introduce color subtly, I feel it's a way to just establish confidence. So you can see here I'm not adding some of the reflected light on the side of his head. First of all, my decision was I didn't want to go there. I wanted to keep it basic. I didn't want to introduce multiple light sources because I felt like, well, maybe it'd be interesting to see if I can keep it similar to the light source in the first painting, in the photograph of just Ron Perlman as himself. I later decided to add those backlights, and some of the cooler lights behind him because I felt like, in doing this, I'm losing a little bit of description, a little bit of form by not putting these lights in. And then when I decided to do it, I realized it's not going to be that easy to do it quickly. I could take some time and render it out, but to do something like that in shorthand is kind of a challenge, and I wanted to try it out. I think it's honestly, to be honest with you, I think it's the weakest part of the painting when I put in that reflected light on the sides of his forehead and his cheekbone. But I'm glad I tried it. I'm glad I went there and tried to discover what I could get out of doing it quickly. So I try not to get too darks with my darks. As you can see on the painting, I'm painting the creases in his forehead and some of the shadows and highlights. I try not to get too dark or too light everywhere before I finish it, because I want to make sure I'm describing the form in small steps, just progressive. See how the shadow is building deeper and deeper around his forehead. I think that's a good way to like it once again, ease into the water. Make sure you don't lose that confidence, because if you build something up slowly, you can kind of feel it. You feel it moving in the right direction. It's solid steps, and it's easier to go from there.